Huh. Huh.
Ooh, hello. Rayclast is a cursed land. You'd have to be mad to settle here.
Hi, Zizaran here with another league starter for the upcoming 325 league, and this is a spell build. In the plethora of all the melee builds, there are still some spell builds that are incredibly strong for the upcoming league, and this is something I worked with Baratha as a collab for last league. So some of you might remember the Archmage Ice Nova build, and Steelmage ended up making a similar build as well, and I ended up playing this and ended up in a bit of my own version with ending up to be the most powerful thing I have ever played, especially with Kitava's Thirst and stuff. And you can see in the background, this build is absolutely just insane to play. Now, it did get a few nerfs, notably like Inspiration is changed now, so it does have higher mana cost. So scaling at cast speed will be a little bit scarier than before, but this is an incredibly strong starter. It's just such a fun build because even though it's a starter, it can scale so much. This is something you can really keep pouring gear into. Now, in Acropolis League, it was obviously very easy to get super min-max gear on everything through the graveyard crafting. So you will have, it'll last for longer, right? You'll be able to invest more into it. It is an insane clearer, insane bosser. I did not personally enjoy it early on until Kitava's Thirst. So I personally felt like I had to suffer through the start of the build with self-casting and stuff. And you can either use Arcanist Brand or you can self-cast the Frost Bolts. So the way this works is you're casting the Ice Novas on the Frost Bolts and then they explode. And as always, if you consider these build guides useful, please consider subscribing. It helps us out a lot. So I'll quickly show how this build plays at the endgame. Nicest build I've ever played. This is an insane budget character. So the most notable thing that you will not have early on is the insane amount of cast speed. So I can probably just take off my rings. And you'll notice that it won't fire as fast. That was the question I got the most lastly, is that my people would be like, my Kitava's Thirst isn't firing as fast as yours. And even just taking off like 70% cast speed from my rings, you will notice it's a lot that you might have to hold down right click more. The way this works is it's firing the frost bolts and then you're clicking on them and it's spamming Ice Novas. So 50% chance to trigger a socketed spell when you spend at least 100 mana. So it's very important that your mana is over 100. We are going to have roughly 200 and lastly, I did have 100, which was really nice. But so it will be a little bit more annoying on the mana. Should it be fine though? You also, like, worst case scenario, could use a mana flask, but you really do want to avoid that in this build. A thing that feels really nice as well is Frostbling a Wintry Blast. As you can see on this build right now, I have enough damage that it's killing the white monsters. But even just that it has no cooldown on the Wintry Blast, having a lot of cast speed makes that feel really nice. And then you have a second Flame Dash so that you can get over things instantly, because the Wintry Blast has a cast time. Flame Dash, when you haven't casted a movement skill recently, will be completely instant. So can save you from a lot of stuff. For bossing, it is a little bit different. I wish I had a Uber here to show you, but I don't have any left on standard. But I would put Sigil of Power down and Frostbomb and then just blast and just absolutely mows everything down. This is a build that you can get such an insane amount of damage. I think I had 80 million, 50 million. I don't know. I was just insta-killing Uber Maven. Now, I also want to show off the alternative setup. I didn't enjoy this as much. You have two setups. So you can have faster casting and Arcanist Brand swapping. Because for bosses, you definitely want Arcanist Brand, but maybe you don't want for clearing. So the way it looks for clearing is you're manually casting Frostbolt yourself, and then you're casting the Ice Nova with it as you go. So this is what I preferred. So I definitely did not enjoy using Arcanist Brand for mapping, but I'll show you what that looks like too. So with this, you now put Arcanist Brand here, and that is just throwing out loads of these, and you do have to every now and again throw down a new one. Obviously without that you do way less damage. It'll be fine for like low level stuff, but it is a huge multiplier. So I definitely prefer self-casting, but those are the two playstyle options. So, as normal, we are using Path of Building. We have a video detailing how Path of Building works if you are unfamiliar with it, but we do use this for all of our guides. Here you can see we have a normal step-by-step skill tree to make it very simple when to take the Ascendancies and when to take which skill points so you don't get lost. A thing that's really nice about the Ascendancy is that endurance charges have been buffed. They will give you even more elemental mitigation now, so the main thing you want to solve is the Fizz hit. However, as you can see, we do have a decently sized Fizz hit. ES gets buffed a little bit. Didn't use that much physical damage taken as elemental before, and you get a large amount of damage on this build. Very large. Honestly, I'm still considering league starting this myself because I'm so familiar with it and it is so strong. It just seems a little criminal not to league start melee as a streamer in this league, but we'll see. It's very high up on my list. It's such a nice build. If you go to items, early game, it is just things like spell damage, cast speed, etc. You do want to get profane ones. Anything with cast speed is so nice on this. But early game is mostly life, resist, and mana. This is an Archmage build, and if you're a returning player, the way Archmage works now is it doesn't cost an insane amount of mana spend. It's just about how much mana you have. Mid-game, you do want to pick up, for example, the Valako's Sign is really good for Leech, and the Adziri's Foible, which is surprisingly common, always ends up being quite expensive, even though it is common. I must have found over 50 or 100 last league, and they were selling for multiple divines each. And putting Fertile Catalyst in this will be really nice when you have a 24% roll. In the endgame, you can see Kitava Thirst and Adziri's Foible with Inveterate. And then we're starting to get a little bit better weapons here. If you were playing this last league, it might feel a lot worse. It's not that the build is worse, but we were able to craft literal perfect gear in the graveyard. If you do want an example of perfect gear, is Zizaran Archmage, I'm going to keep the gear on it. But you can see the ones here are virtually perfect. And getting these, well, you are going to spam a lot of essences. But the big difference is we are most likely, hopefully, not able to have double fractured gear, but there is a chance that with recombinators we will have double fractured gear still, so you do need a lot of suppression as well. And like I said earlier in the endgame thing, when I have a lightning leech on a Kitava's Thirst, it is really nice that you can get the suppression on gloves instead of lightning damage. So do be corrupting the Kitava's Thirsts. You can get ailment avoidance as well. We do have a setup for that, which is very nice. So a lot of different setups here. Now, Sai came up with a really good idea for how to get suppression easier. So what we do is we have a careful planning here, which makes the Mage Bane give you a lot more suppression from the int being turned over to Dex. Obviously, int is good for the build, but you really want to be suppression capped. It is super important. There are some additional notes here for like, if you can't sustain your mana, you can't fix your suppression, how do you fix these issues? And this is a build I've played a large amount, so I should be able to help you with any issues. And still considering playing it. It is so nice. A really cool thing about this build is that its defense and damage is scaling out the same thing. So you can see that we only have 3.6k life, we have 9.6k mana, and we're doing so much damage taken as mana. And we have a decent amount of energy shield as well, and we are splitting the damage taken through Corrupted Soul, with some being taken on the ES and some on the life and some on mana. So we're sort of triple splitting it, and we do recover such a large amount. So very nice. We get instant leech here. That's why leech is super important. Huge amount of mana back. We're getting life leech, ES leech. Just such a masterpiece of a build. Feels wonderful. The bandits for this build, honestly, it is a little bit of personal choice. Oak isn't the best on this because we don't have a lot of percentage life. Kraton is so nice. That's probably what we recommend. 8% movement speed is quite noticeable. However, if you're really enjoying moving around with Frostbling of Wintry Blast, then you could take either Illyria to make rest capping easier, or just taking a skill point. It is quite a skill point intensive build, so getting that one skill point will make a difference early on. Pantheon is going to be Brine King and Ralakesh. So some easy things to fuck up on this build. Not having Leech at all, you really do need Leech. This is particularly important because we have the Leech Mastery with making it instant. You really will feel not having that. Mana is really important. It's how we scale our damage, so you do want a decent amount of mana. Not having the reduced mana cost of skills on your rings crafted would also be quite a big thing. So those are the main things to mess up. It is quite a okay build. You just want really make sure you stack cast speed. The more cast speed you can get, the better. It is super noticeable, especially Kitava Thirst having reduced cast speed, and also the fact that it's 50% chance to trigger. It's not 100%. So if you're ever like, you will get periods where you're like casting and you're like, did I mess up my mana? Like, is it below 100? Which now it's really hard to get below 100, but last patch we could accidentally have like 90, but you'll just stand there casting and you'll get unlucky streaks. It will happen. It's just a bit of a downside of the fact that it is 50% and not 100. We do still have the Light of Meaning too, and that works with a Natural Instinct. Now, for some of my other builds, I've said you don't necessarily need to get a Natural Instinct because other builds will be making it more expensive. This is the build that is making it more expensive, because all these nodes in here will be getting the +5 flat mana. So this setup of getting the Unnatural Instinct and the Line of Meaning with the mana node, so insanely strong. So especially at the end game, this pops off really hard. And this is such a cool league starter because it works really good early, right? We saw that last league. I played it loads, and Garatha and Steel and loads of my friends. But it is a little bit rare that you have a league starter that is really strong early, but doesn't have a low ceiling. So you can keep scaling into it. This could be your only build for the league. It does everything, right? If you are a player that you want to put 100 or 1,000 divines into a build, this is a great build for that. And when you're able to drop your mana fast, it's basically whenever it feels good, to be honest. It's just when it feels good. Eventually, you'll have so much mana and you're recovering 10% when you use the skill that you'll be like, I don't need this anymore. I'm fine without it. Another thing to mention, so the Glorious Vanity, if you don't know how that works, the number is what changes what the small nodes do. So here it's been quite lucky, cold damage, spell block, and cast speed. And the name is what changes the keystone. So you do one off Doriani, and you should be able to simulate it in Path of Buildings, look up the number of the ones for sale. But there are a lot of them that if you put it here, will make Deep Wisdom into a good node. Like, for example, I got +1 max cold res on mine, and I was running a melding setup on my super in-game one. Don't know if we can get insane enough gear to fit melding in this build anymore, though. Graveyard was obviously very nice for that. That's all I can think of for this build. I hope you guys enjoyed as much as I did last league. Thank you guys so much for watching. Sub if you liked the video, but more importantly, try to die less than I do.